Hey guys. I didn't realize I wasn't sure I would get the chance to do this, but I am in the Czech Republic, which isn't really apparent from my background, but I promise you I am in the Czech Republic. I'm in the apartment where we're staying. It's an apartment of a friend of ours, uh, who's letting us stay with him. So yeah, it's in Prague. But I'm here to do the jet lag book tag. I was tagged by Municorn over at the Bookish Land, and I'll link her video down below. Uh, yeah, so these are just some questions about books that sort of seem to kind of want to imitate sort of the feeling of jet lag, which I have experienced over this week, and which I'm only just sort of adjusting to. I'm only just sort of adjusting to the time zone of the Czech Republic, just in time for me to fly back to the U.S. tomorrow. So that'll be nice. But here I go. The first question is, which book made you feel tired? And this, for me, the first book that came to mind for me was the trilogy by Samuel Beckett. So his trilogy of three novels, obviously a trilogy of three novels. I'm sorry, and it's very sort of modernist inspired, sort of stream of consciousness. Not all of it is stream of consciousnessy, but it does have a lot of that influence. And especially the second two novels, the second and third, Malone Dies and The Unnameable, tend to, by the time I was done with them, I couldn't do any more. Like, for the rest of the day in which I read them, either of them, I couldn't do any more mental work in any way. I went and I watched Netflix or something, and I read them at the rate of about 50 pages a day, which felt like a bit too much, because by the time I reached page 20 or 25, I was already sort of like, I'm beat. I feel like I should have read those with like another book on the side that would like easier, like, I don't know, some kind of a genre novel or something. But like, the Malone Dies just deals so much with so many of the sort of mundane aspects of everyday life, like especially talking about objects and talking about sort of flashbacks and how we think about the past, and it's sort of repetitive in a way, I think, because of that. And none of these novels have any kind of narrative. They don't have a strong plot at all, which also makes them tiring. Not having a plot doesn't make them tiring, but not having a plot and having this strong sort of stream of consciousness, because especially The Unnameable is like from inside of one man's head, and so, and I don't know, it's a tough three novels to read. Thankfully, they're all short, but the last novel especially, I think, because because it is literally all inside one man's head, and the test sentences can be so difficult to follow. There's no action in that novel. The last two novels, there was some semblance of action, but in the last one, there's nothing. Um, and so that doesn't help with the rest of it. Uh, I don't know. And the sentences in the last novel also get longer and longer and longer, to the point where for me, by the end, they were nearly impossible to follow. Yeah. So, yeah, that trilogy definitely exhausted me. But the second one is, what book made you feel confused? And this, I could say the same thing. I could say the same novel for this second question, but instead I'm going to say Soul Mountain by Gao Jingjian, which has a sort of, at the beginning of the novel, has sort of a semblance of a narrative of this man who is diagnosed with cancer, with terminal cancer, and so faced with death, he goes on this journey to a place called Soul Mountain, and but that the sort of actual narrative of it all ends there. Basically, it then kind of branches off into, it has four perspectives in this novel. There's I, which is what it starts with. There's he, there's she, and there's you. There's a little bit from the perspective of you, and I just didn't know what to make of these four perspectives. And also, the novel, each chapter is sort of its own enclosed incident, and so I didn't know what to make of the connections between these different stories at the time. And part of that was because I wasn't an experienced reader at the time. I hadn't read any literary fiction or classics, just because I wanted to. Most of the classics I read had been for school. Um, so that was part of it. And this is one of the books that's like really high on my list of books that I need to reread. Um, but yeah, that book, that I was baffled by it. Yeah. Uh, Next question is, what book opened your eyes to a whole new world? And I'm gonna say Gilead by Marilyn Robinson, because I had always been very interested in religion, like just interested in the rituals of religion and the different sort of the different just beliefs about human nature and the origins of humankind and the origin of the world of different religions. But Gilead, that novel, and the two novels that followed it by Marilyn Robinson, Home and Lila, but they kind of opened my eyes to how a lot of the ideas in religion are also just applicable to my life and anyone's life, even if you're not religious, I think. Because religion is just ultimately, I think, about finding meaning in what seems to be a meaningless world. And I think it was Gilead and the novels that follow. I guess I should say the Gilead trilogy overall, but since it's asking for one book, I felt like I needed to say one book. I felt like that novel definitely opened my eyes to that, which was very important and has had a big impact on sort of my thinking and what I want to read in the future. So, yeah. Next question is, what book made you feel sick? I don't quite know if this has ever really happened to me, but the novel that must have come closest for me is The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, which is the story of this Lithuanian family who moved to the United States, and it's the father of the family, whose name I can't remember now, is the main character, and he gets a job in a meat factory, and so this novel has a lot of vivid descriptions of the meat industry in the early 1900s, and it's really disgusting what passed for meat that was edible at the time. It's still kind of disgusting these days what passes for what is edible, but you see some of those videos of like an up close examination of like a McDonald's chicken nugget or something, and you think, oh, not much has changed. But yeah, that book is pretty disgusting, and also disgusting in terms of its examination of how workers were treated. For example, I don't remember much from this novel because I read it when I was 16 or 17, and but one of the things was that you didn't get any, if a worker in a meat factory came to work early and started early, they didn't get any extra pay, none at all. But if they showed up a minute late to work, they were docked whole hours pay. And I don't know why that detail stuck with me, but yeah. And you know what? It's because of unions that kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. And of course in the US there's a huge war on unions, so yeah. Again, not much has changed. And the last book is, what book did you read on your last long journey? Which, of course, I'm on my last long journey of the summer. And I have been reading 3 books. But the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that I have read primarily this week, which might be a bit of a surprise. And it's this one. The Annals of Imperial Rome. You could also probably call it The Animals of Imperial Rome, but no, it's The Annals of Imperial Rome by Tacitus. Uh, this, at first I was thinking, oh, Lukash, you're just torturing yourself reading this on vacation. But no, actually, it is really good. I think really good vacation reading. Actually, it has a lot of the political intrigue and the wars. Um, he just writes about them in a way that's very engaging. There were a lot of they are a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. It's one book, but as you can see, I'm actually closing in on being done. I have like 84 pages. Um, I have a 6-hour flight tomorrow, so I might actually manage to finish this. Um, Sort of in the back of my head, I'm hoping that happens, but I don't know. Because I have 2 other books here. But yeah, this is really good. Uh, yeah. And then the other 2 I've been working on, I haven't read as much of these, but I have read them some. The first is The Republic by Plato, which again, you might think like that's a torturous vacation read, but I've already read it once, so it's not exactly that hard for me to read because I've read it once already, and I've also listened to several lectures about the Republic. Um, but I love it. I love the dialogue format of it. I think the dialogue format makes it much easier to read than a lot of other philosophical works. And then the last one is this kind of little collection of some of Dostoevsky's work. I read the entirety of Notes from Underground in one day in the airport when we were flying here first, and just last night I read the Dream of a Ridiculous Man, which is the last short story in here, and I also really loved that. And on my way home, I may try to read White Knights and possibly at least some of the excerpts from the House of the Dead, but I'm not sure. So yeah, I actually managed to do a video from the Czech Republic, which I'm excited about. I didn't think I'd get to do it. I hope it made sense. I'm going to tag 3 people who 2 of whom I'm certain have traveled and must have experienced jet lag, and one of whom I'm almost so certain that I'm not really doubting it very much, but Curtis at Curtis Books and Films, who I know is going to Spain in a few days or something like that. Steve Donoghue, who appears to have traveled just about everywhere, and must have experienced jet lag. And finally, Fariba at The Medieval Reader, who I just kind of assume has traveled because she speaks such excellent French. Please excuse me if that is not true, Fariba. But yeah, that's who I tag. So, thank you for watching, guys. Goodbye.